So let's continue with the text content moderator. What we are going to do is we are going to execute the program and see the response. So we have seen the file content, which is located inside this particular folder. So this part of the code is nothing but just taking the folder name of the file, which we saw, and we are opening that file. If you have any questions on these particular lines, feel free to refer to the Python programming training. So we are opening the file currentmonthcurrentyear.txt and passing the content here into this function right here. So if you remember, this client is the content moderator client. So this is of type content moderator. So we have created this object from that REST API endpoint with a key right here. Now we are calling this particular function screen text from this particular object, text underscore moderation screen text. That is the API we are calling from the SDK. As you can see, this will in turn call one REST interface. Now, to know more about this particular function, what you can do is you can just copy this and go to Google and search for it. So most of the time, first hit will be the documentation of the API. Sometimes you have to look a little bit. Text moderation, screen text. That is the documentation of the API. If you look at the location, it is REST API, cognitive services. It changes these names every now and then. So Azure AI services is the current name. Content moderator, so that is the topic. Inside that, it is text moderation screen text. That's the API we are calling. And it is a post interface. Although we are using the SDK, we are not calling this API directly. But as you can see, some of these arguments we are passing to the SDK is exactly same as here. So the main thing it takes is the text content to moderate, and these are the other parameters it takes. So normally REST API has a couple of different ways to accept data from the client. One is inside the URL like this. Another is in the request header and request body. I'm not going into the details of it because hardly we will be using REST APIs directly. We'll be using a wrapped form of the REST API like this. Most of the REST APIs will be wrapped in functions like this or SDK like this. Pretty straightforward Python function. You don't have to worry what happens inside. You just give the inputs. If it is URI parameters, request body, response body, doesn't matter to you. So that is the abstraction which we get from SDKs like this. But the SDK is internally calling this particular REST interface. Just be mindful about it. Now, we explained the details of a request. Now, how is the response? The response is going to look like a JSON from the REST API. For example, if this is the text which we are giving for moderation, this is the response. So there is email, which is inside the PII or personally identifiable information, email, IP address, phone number, address, and things like that. SSN, different types of classifications, so on and so forth. And this is the description of what each stuff means. What is category 1, 2, and 3, all the rest of the details. So this is the documentation of the REST API we are calling. So there is way more object and possibilities within the text moderation. We won't be dealing with each and every one of it, but most of the things you can find it in the documentation like this. So one of the things I have done is I have downloaded this particular documentation. So the reason I have downloaded this documentation is because, as I mentioned, things changes and they remove all the documentations. So if you're watching this video long after I have recorded, probably these things may not exist in the internet. There'll be a newer service which replaces this. But if you want to follow through these instructions and have a look at the documentation which we are talking about, feel free to have a look, and I will be adding this particular documentation, which is a PDF, to the code of the training. So you will be able to download it from the code. Mostly I'll be uploading it into the Git. So you'll be having this downloaded documentation so that you will not be outdated. Now let's get back to the code and try to run it and see the output. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breakpoint right here. If you want, you can put breakpoints anywhere you want. But for the time being, I'm going to look at the object which I got here. So run, start debugging. So it didn't take much time to run, and we have got the output from the API, the text content moderator. So I'm using pprint. Probably this pprint as dict may not give you good result. So what we can do is we can look directly into this particular object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to the watch. If you have any questions on what I'm doing, feel free to refer to my previous training. I'll be keep saying that because all of this kind of techniques are explained in that training, which I'll be using throughout this training anyway. So this is the object we got from the API. It's a screen object. The name of the object doesn't really matter. What matters is the content of the response. So be mindful that it is a representation of that JSON we have seen in the documentation one way or the other. So one of the fields we are seeing here is auto-corrected text. So you can see here, auto-corrected text. So I'm going to push this a little bit here. So as you can see here, it has auto-corrected residential, my residential address. So this spelling was wrong in the original text. It has correctly detected the language. So normalized text. So normalized text is this. It has the spelling mistake, but some of the things has taken out, like there, and some unnecessary stuff has taken out. This is the original text with all the spelling errors and things like that. Now comes the PII, probably one of the most useful field. PII field is there. It has found out the email. So email is there. So I'm going into the object to see each item. So it has detected an email, and this is where it has detected that. So PII has detected. So IP address is not there. There's a phone number. It has detected a phone number inside the text. There's a phone number, and this is the location of it. At least for this example, it is working exactly as we want. Now in the terms, we can see some profanity has found out at this particular location. It is within terms. The profanity comes inside this particular object, terms, and there is one occurrence. You can try different examples and you will get different results. So that's the simple working of the API. If you want to dump it down from that object, you can do it. This is just a lazy print I'm doing here. This print won't give you much readable output, although it dumps down pretty much everything in a JSON-like format. It's not really proper JSON, but kind of JSON. So very simple, straightforward code, and it does almost magic. If you're writing a program to do this without calling this, it's going to be very, very hard. From the random text, finding out profanity, autocorrection, all that kind of things are very, very complicated. If you think you can use regex and things like that, trust me, it is way more complicated than that. So this piece of code right here has a lot of industry application. As it is a cloud service, it has security, and the data you're giving is completely private. This particular file right here has 100% privacy because it is your account. The data is not going anywhere. Privacy, security. For example, you can make sure that it is accessible only from your network. I'm not going into the details of it, but this is all the bells and whistles coming with the cloud. Any cloud service, you can have all those security, reliability, high availability, scale, all that kind of things. And finally, we are not paying for the service when we are not using it. Cost optimization. So we are calling the API and then only we are paying. So pay when we use. That is the single most important thing about this. And as I have already mentioned, these things get updated every now and then. If it is not catching an email today, tomorrow it will. Almost all the cloud, the AI services are fast moving, changing dramatically every single day. So I'm repeating that one particular point again and again because this may not work when you see this presentation. That doesn't mean that the concepts are wrong. What is the concept? The concept here is that there is a cloud service we used to moderate text. Will it be there after 20 years? Yes. The name of that thing will be same as this? No. But it'll be there. It'll be a REST API. You will have to call it somehow, something like this. There'll be a different function name and you will get a different type of result. There'll be corresponding documentation like the one we have seen. You will have to look into it and get information out of it in a useful format. That is the concept we are trying to learn. Now, the question I would like to address before we go from this particular lesson is that can an LLM like ChatGPT do what we have done so far using the content moderator? The answer is yes. So let's look at our example once again. So this is the content moderation text we've been using so far. So I can ask ChatGPT or any other LLM, Cloud or Gemini or anything, even the Llama 3.1, which is the latest as we speak. They can do a spell check on this and correct it. Even this notepad is doing that. Can they find emails and phone number? Yes. Can they find profanity? Yes. So it can do everything we have done, but the models we are using or the services we are using is specifically for this particular purpose. And I always believe a general purpose AI will not replace a special purpose model like this. There'll be always purpose for special purpose models. They are small, they respond quite fast, their footprint is less, and their hallucination will be less because they are focusing on one particular part. So every single thing we are going to do in the rest of the training, you may find a different way to do it, different model to do it. But that's not the point here. The point is we are looking at some special purpose model built for specific purpose, and they have always a place in the industry to do that one particular thing. They'll be very fine-tuned to do that. So the answer is yes, ChatGPT can do this, what we have done, but it can do a lot of other things as well. It could be slow, it could be expensive, it could be too much of a task to get it done through a proper prompt engineering to make it do what we have done. So we have seen a typical AI service. We are calling a REST API with a content. We are passing an input to a REST API and getting a response. This is how almost all the services we are going to see in the training, rest of the training is going to come up. So this is a typical example. This is as simple as this. It is not going to get any more complicated than this. There are a couple of things like CI/CD and stuff like that, but apart from that, 90% of the training is going to be straightforward like this.